I just want to figure out what does it mean for me to be faithful. And I want to try to do what I'm supposed to do to leave this world a little better than what I found it. And I think at the heart, that's what Martin, or ML as his homies called him, I think that's what he was trying to do. And, on days like today, I just keep reflecting on something Dr. Cornel West said, which he said in America, we need to resist the sense of Claus-ification of Martin Luther King Jr.,
Come on.
where we kind of turned him into a demigod who was not touched by humanity, who wasn't afraid, who had all the right answers. And I just don't know that was the case. I actually think that ML, as his friends called him, was probably a lot more like us. And I think that can give us some inspiration to think about how we respond in the moments that have found us. They're very different and at times very similar to the world he was in. But I think we've got to think about what did it mean for us to be faithful outside of titles, outside of virtue signaling, outside of performative behavior. How can we be faithful in trying to leave this world better than we found?
I love that. I mean, I'm struck by, I think I'm struck by the notion that in this moment in time, I feel the need to be liberated from this notion, like the sense of Claus-ification, or this, like, if it's not sensational, we're not doing it. Cause all I've got the capacity for right now, honestly, in my world, especially since October 7th and the atrocities in the Middle East, is I've got the capacity to do what is the next right thing. That's it. So one of the questions I actually want to wonder with you about is how do you think Dr. King would function in a world that it seems to be more prone, and even in the justice world, more prone to platform building and image management than doing the next right thing as well as possible? You know what I'm saying? I do. Because I do think that he, peace be upon him, his memory is still being disseminated in a social media kind of clickbait, quotable kind of way. And it's how do you think he would have functioned in a world where you could do this kind of stuff?
Yeah. And I think Dr. King in our moment would probably be a lot more like he was the last year and a half of his life. There's a great book called, it's over there on my bookshelf. I think it's by Tavis Smiley. And it unpacks the last year of Dr. King's life. A lot of heartbreak. He was contending for nonviolence, contending for love at a time when a very righteous Black power movement was arising. I found this old video before where it's grainy and he's out in the field somewhere and it's dark and he's giving this kind of impromptu speech. And what he's saying is, I'm tired of hatred. I'm tired of supremacy. I'm tired of such and such. And he says, I don't want it no matter who's offering it. He says the answer to white supremacy is not Black supremacy. It's beloved community. And there's this sense when I watch him, you listen to what the archivists and people said about his last year was that while he was becoming even more radicalized within himself around, we really got to do something to change this world. He was also, it seemed, deeply disturbed about how easily we as human beings, because of the anxiety we were feeling and the fact that change takes too long, we're beginning to sign up and sign off on believing that the world can only be better if violence is a ready tool that we use to engage people who are different. And I think in that way, we like to remember Dr. King because I think he reminds us of how we want to be. And then we have moments where we're viewing somebody like Donald Trump, who's probably showing a little bit more of who we actually are. And I think the challenge is, how do we reach for spiritual imagination that Martin had when we feel so under threat of losing a democracy? People feel very unsafe, rightfully so. These aren't things people are making up in their mind. Queer folks feel unsafe. Muslims feel unsafe. Palestinians feel unsafe. Jewish sisters and brothers feel unsafe. Black folks been feeling unsafe for the last 400 years. A lot of people are struggling with what it means to be safe. And I think the challenge is, how do I hold that real fear without not turning into the very thing that I abhor? But I think it's more difficult than quotables and speeches and cute book and all of that. I think it's a real primal thing that we're
Yeah.
wrestling with.